Welcome to a deep dive. Today we're jumping into the source material you sent us about, well, one of Europe's smallest countries, Liechtenstein.
Yes, it's fascinating stuff. It's tucked right there between Switzerland and Austria.
Often gets that label, doesn't it? The millionaire's playground.
It does, but these sources, they really show there's so much more to it than just, wealth and banking, a much richer story.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to really unpack the key insights from all this material.
Right. We want to pull out the core findings, the surprising facts, look at everything from its ancient history and unique politics.
To its economy, its culture, what really makes it distinctive.
Exactly. Let's dive in.
Okay, so starting with the basics, the geography. The sources stress it's landlocked.
Completely. Squeezed right between Switzerland on one side, Austria on the other.
Described as this narrow, mountainous strip along the Rhine River.
And small is the word. The sources make a point of this. Only 160 square kilometers.
Wow. Which makes it, what, the fourth smallest in Europe?
That's right. About 24 kilometers long, maybe 12 wide at its widest.
And most people actually live down in the western part, in the Rhine Valley.
Yes, that's where the population is concentrated. Because the rest is very mountainous.
Grauspitz being the highest peak, over 2,500 meters.
Mm-hmm. And that rugged terrain is key. The sources say only about 30% of the land is usable for farming.
The rest is mostly wooded mountains. Good for views and, I guess, skiing, as we'll see later.
Exactly. But it really limits the space for settlement and agriculture.
So what does this geography really mean for Liechtenstein, according to the sources?
Well, it fundamentally shaped its history. It was a natural transit route.
But the mountains also limited transport options for a long time, right? Outside that main valley.
Precisely. And the Rhine River is just crucial, culturally, economically.
Supporting the capital, Vaduz, and even, the sources say, playing a symbolic role for the financial sector.
Kind of interesting, yeah. Plus, it's vital for wildlife habitats.
Okay, let's rewind. Way back. Early history.
The sources mention archaeological finds pointing to settlements going back centuries.
Like a late Bronze Age site near Balzers, 800-400 BC.
Yes, with wood dwellings, tools, pottery, even iron weapons found. Other feats too, Schönwald, Eschen.
And the Roman influence seems pretty significant.
Oh, definitely. It was part of the Roman province of Raetia. The sources stress its role in Roman road networks, trade.
Lincoln Gaul, Pannonia, the Danube region.
Right. They found salt pans from around 200 AD. Roman villas popped up along transit routes, later castles too.
Bricks from Roman foundries, bits of a villa near Balzers.
And Roman troops were stationed there, fortresses at Balzers and Vaduz.
It's interesting how the sources connect Vaduz Castle's towers to possible Roman predecessors.
Romans built infrastructure too, bridges, tunnels, maybe sacred sites near hot springs. They found Roman stores, inscriptions.
But here's a key insight from the sources. Despite all this history, its location and maybe low profile
helped it avoid the really big conflicts that hammered its neighbors over the centuries.
Yeah, allowing it to keep a more distinct identity, maybe.
Right. Moving forward then to how the actual principality formed.
The sources are clear. Before the current territory came together, there wasn't a single Liechtenstein.
No, the land was part of other areas like Hohenems, the House of Liechtenstein, the family.
They actually started acquiring land elsewhere first, in Austria.
That's right. Their first big acquisition was the lordship of Schellenberg in what's now Austria.
And Vaduz, name we associate most of the country, that came later, 1342.
Yes. And the sources suggest even then, these territories weren't the family's main focus for a long time.
Relatively minor compared to their other holdings.
Exactly. Until opportunities arose, like when the local House of Ems died out in the 15th century, that's when powers like the Habsburgs started getting interested too.
So the unified country we know today is actually, well, quite late in forming.
Remarkably late. The sources state it was 1712 when Schellenberg and Vaduz were first elevated to a principality by Emperor Charles VI.
And then the really crucial step was 1719.
Yes, Emperor Karl VI gave it full imperial status as a principality over the combined territories, Vaduz and Schellenberg. And the ruling count became Fürst, or Prince.
And the family still holds land in Austria today, separate from the state.
That's right, through inheritance.
Okay, let's jump to the 19th century. Big constitutional changes happening then.
Yeah, between 1818 and 1874, significant shifts.
The 1866 Constitution established hereditary rule, but it also sort of restricted the prince's power.
A bit. Nominally, yes, in favor of the people, but, and the sources are very clear on this, the prince kept huge authority.
Like what? Tax exemptions, budget power?
Control over administration, police, military, a strong legislative veto, initiating laws in the upper house, controlling foreign affairs like customs treaties.
So not exactly a figurehead monarch even then.
Not at all. Then came the post-World War I changes, a major turning point.
The 1921 Constitution.
Exactly. Reorganized the legislature, gave much more power to Parliament, formally became a constitutional monarchy.
Shared executive power. The government needed the confidence of both the prince and Parliament.
Yes. And an independent Supreme Court was established.
But even so, the sources highlight some, well, peculiarities compared to other European monarchies.
Right. The prince kept extensive personal rights, like being personally liable for damages caused by state officials. That's unusual.
So this raises a big question the sources touch on. It ended absolute monarchy, but how democratic is it really?
Well, the prince retained significant power, enough that in 1938 he could apparently impose dictatorship-like measures by suspending parts of the Constitution.
And the sources note that even with democratic institutions,
Parliaments, elections, courts.
it's sometimes rated lower on democracy indexes than neighbors because of limits on popular voting rights and the prince's current powers.
Exactly. The current constitution, even after revisions in 2003 and 2012, gives the prince far more authority than most European monarchs, selecting ministers, signing laws, dissolving parliament.
A 2009 initiative tried to curb that power.
And it did, but it only resulted in a minor change regarding judicial appointments in 2012. It's a really unique power balance.
Okay, shifting gears. The economy.
The sources say for a long time, up to 1806, there wasn't much active foreign or economic policy. The family focused on acquiring property.
And the sources mention things like castles, churches as national treasures, built with mixed funding.
Princely money, public funds, private owners, foundations, yes.
But the real transformation was post-World War II, wasn't it?
Absolutely fascinating. From agrarian to this renowned offshore banking center.
How did that happen? The sources point to leveraging Swiss agreements, neutrality.
And catering to a specific wealthy international clientele. Banking secrecy became central to the model.
Though the sources note that model wasn't easily copied elsewhere.
Right. Liechtenstein had a unique set of circumstances and resources.
And today, it definitely fits that millionaire's playground image, a leading financial center.
Success factors mentioned are the business environment, stability, rule of law, low taxes, liberal labor laws, skilled workforce.
Often trained through apprenticeships.
Yes, a strong system. It adapted well to globalization, focusing on niche banking, private banking, wealth management, with strict regulation, too.
Like the 2020 Financial Market Authority Act,
Yeah.
making supervision more independent.
Exactly. The FMA's role has become critical.
And the growth figures are just staggering.
Aren't they? GDP per capita up over 300% between 2000 and 2020, the fastest in the EEA.
Benefiting from investments, being outside the EU's direct orbit during the financial crisis.
Its strong currency helped, too, shielding the local economy. Domestic employment even grew during recessions elsewhere.
Though that created a temporary dualism, the sources say. Growth didn't always mean proportional local job growth immediately.
A temporary effect, yes. And while finance is key, the sources do acknowledge scrutiny over things like bank failures, litigation, tax strategies, though often countered by reputable reports.
But it's not just banking. Industry and innovation also grew.
Rapidly, starting late 19th, early 20th century. Driven by entrepreneurs, strong networks, family, business, politics, all intertwined.
Companies like Booker, Emskamy, Hilti's mentioned as examples.
Yes. Industrialization transformed crafts, needing more water power for early textile factories.
And during WWI, even though neutral, savings grew, helping the banking system. And white-collar jobs supported the Austro-Hungarian war economy indirectly.
An interesting side effect, yes.
So the takeaway is diversification, beyond banking and manufacturing into services.
Definitely. Though manufacturing is still significant, about 35% involves parts, especially for automotive, and construction is noted as resilient.
Okay, World War I, a huge turning point for Europe. How did Liechtenstein navigate it?
The sources emphasize its neutrality, despite being surrounded.
Commitment to being unarmed, respect for international law. Austria respected that.
Apparently so, which helped avoid unrest. But being so small meant relying on others for diplomacy after closing its Paris consulate.
The Netherlands played a role initially.
Yes, due to historical ties.
But the really big impact was after the war, the collapse of Austria-Hungary.
Exactly. That left Liechtenstein isolated, Without its traditional protector, a huge vulnerability.
leading to a fundamental shift towards.
Switzerland. The sources call it a watershed moment. New arrangements for diplomatic representation, security,
Effectively becoming, as the sources say, an integral part of Greater Switzerland.
pretty much. Sharing a border only with Switzerland after that. Limited access to Europe in some ways, but guaranteed peace, protection, prosperity.
Political systems aligned, ruling families friendly.
Yes. And while cultural ties with Austria remained, many people embraced Swiss neutrality. This partnership eventually led to the vital customs and monetary union.
Bringing economic stability.
Crucially, post-WWI, it also rebuilt ties with Italy, Czechoslovakia, the U.S., navigating the new European landscape.
Right. Let's talk culture. That fairy tale country image.
Mountains, castles like Vaduz, Gutenberg, it's easy to see why.
But the sources show a much deeper heritage. Back to medieval settlements, castles.
Schellenberg in the 13th century, Vaduz later. Modern art and literature came later, though, really taking off post-WWII.
And traditions are very alpine, adapted locally.
Yes. Festivals, races, even steam traditions linked to St. Bernard. Folk creativity is seen as expressing identity, connection. Very similar folklore to Switzerland and Vorarlberg.
The State Museum has those carved folk violinists.
Apparently, yes.
Language, officially Alemannic German.
A dialect related to Swabian German, yeah, since the 1866 Constitution.
But what's interesting is how multilingual it is today.
Very much so. Italian widely spoken due to immigrants. English is common too, education, youth culture maybe.
Most people speak more than one language. French sometimes too.
Depending on profession, yes. Cultural links are strongest with Switzerland, Alpine countries, Austria.
Literature came relatively late.
Mhm.
An Alemannic poet, a historian mentions.
Yeah, yes. But here's a real hidden gem the sources mention. The Princely House's library.
Where is it? Prague.
In Prague, yes. And it's described as having an incredible collection of valuable manuscripts. German, Latin, Greek, Czech. One of the best anywhere.
Wow. Okay, festivals and traditions seem important too.
Very much living heritage, the sources say. Incorporating seasons, life stages, adapting over time, influenced by rural and urban life.
Seasonal festivals are big. Winter carnival, spring, summer, autumn.
Yes, with unique traditions linked to the mountains, specific saints' days like St. Lucia, St. Martin, St. Nicholas, plus Christmas.
And the national holiday, August 15th, predates the country itself.
As a feast day, yes. Customs can differ from neighbors, too. Carnival has masks, choosing a king, charivari, big bonfires.
Shifting to tourism. For its size, it has big ambitions.
Lofty ambitions, as the sources put it, focusing on that idyllic scenery of immersive culture.
And getting around is easy. Good public transport, hiking buses.
Apparently so. Swiss trains connect nearby, too.
Great for sports year-round. Winter sports near Vaduz, Melbourne.
Over 50 kilometers of slopes, cross-country winter hiking.
And summer. Hiking seems huge, almost 250 marked trails.
From easy Rhine walks to serious mountain tours, even night hikes. Plus biking, paragliding, climbing, water sports.
And what's this about culinary tourism? Summer for epicures?
Yeah, the sources highlight things like a wine festival in Vaduz and this schnitzel path guiding people to local food spots. Kind of fun.
Makes sense with this scenery. Speaking of which, natural attractions.
Mountains, trails draw thousands. The landscape is dominated by the Alps, great for geology, botany.
Biodiversity is impressive for the size. Valleys of flowers, wildlife.
Deer, chamois, ibex, marmots, eagles, kites, even salamanders, mussels, bats mentioned, many native species.
And conservation is a big focus. Endangered species.
Yes. Studies on potential bear reintroduction, action plans for specific species and habitats involving experts.
But the sources raise an important point about conservation.
Sometimes requiring changes to traditional farming, highlighting the need for compensation.
Exactly. To get local buy-in.
Other challenges mentioned are pollution, waste monitoring, controlling invasive species. The goal is maintaining viable habitats.
Looking at environmental policy overall, a striking fact. Fourth highest forest percentage in Europe.
Much of it planted relatively recently. But conservation concerns go way back, even to the 14th century, over deforestation fears.
Wasn't always popular, though. Convincing people about the forest's importance.
Took effort, yeah. Owning trees was seen as a privilege. The idea of forest as crop was resisted, sometimes needing armed enforcement into the 1930s.
Wow. The largest protected area covers nearly a third of the country.
L1, yes. Over 540 plant species. But threats like acid rain remain.
And awareness focuses more on understanding nature, through models than just signs.
An interesting approach.
What about concrete sustainability actions?
The sources highlight the sustainable Liechtenstein 2030 vision from 2015, integrating environment across all sectors.
Specific examples. Incentives for forest carbon sinks since 2007.
Promoting sustainable agriculture since 2009. The 2020 policy includes measures for habitat diversity, organic farming, education on local food.
Okay, let's look at the social structure, described as unique due to the size. Emphasis on cooperation.
Fostering strong ties across sectors, despite high education levels.
Population around 39,000 total, 35,000 living there.
And over 30% are non-Liechtensteiner nationals. High density, like a city-state.
But despite the high foreign population, a strong national identity persists. Efforts to assimilate and protect culture.
That's what the sources suggest. Education is highly valued. Budget priorities reflect that. Free compulsory education to age 159th grade.
System moves from municipal to state, secondary streamed into vocational, academic, specialized.
Followed by university options. Higher ed attainment is comparable to Central Europe.
The sources mention a traditional population threshold of 33,000 now exceeded. And that huge discrepancy in GDP per capita figures.
70-90K versus state estimates 4 to 5 times higher. Attributed entirely to different statistical methods. Very confusing.
And that little nugget about the name Liechtenstein. Lightstone.
Referring to a Roman castle near Vienna, not in Liechtenstein itself, where the family name originated.
Okay, recent developments. Facing challenges from changes in the EU, Zurich, neighbors.
Yes, needing to adapt national policies. Using enterprise energy to offset shifts. Its small size makes it fragile geopolitically.
But its history and institutions have safeguarded prosperity, the sources argue.
Yes, the financial crisis hit, but efforts were made to reaffirm integrity, compliance.
But integrating with the EU financial order is complex, difficult.
That's highlighted. Plus broader concerns about supranational politics, questions about tax stability often aimed at Switzerland first, then Liechtenstein.
So regulation tightened, pressure over money laundering, tax havens.
Definitely. International pressure has been intense. Domestically, government support in polls sometimes low, dissatisfaction with parts of the Swiss Union mentioned.
But stability maintained through compromise. A 2001 constitutional referendum passed.
Yes. And international pressure, OECD especially, forced more data exchange on serious wrongdoing, eroding some banking secrecy.
Looking ahead then, key challenges. Tax haven status, banking pressure, climate change.
Business failures too. The financial industry needs rapid adaptation to avoid job tax losses.
Access to the EU single market passporting stalled.
That's noted. Global pressure on tax havens, minimum tax concepts are big risks for its tax model.
Banking secrecy under immense pressure. Uncertain reactions from Switzerland, Monaco.
A world tax authority would be another blow. The sources suggest the financial industry faces profound economic and political struggles. A huge transformation needed.
But there are opportunities too, right? The sources stress the diversification success.
Absolutely. Beyond banking and manufacturing into high-value, legal, financial, other services.
Economy benefited from booms, construction resilient.
And the finance sector, despite scrutiny, is seen as having adapted, positioning itself as a leader in a future global financial vision.
Though issues around tax capital flight linked to traditional assets like land, forests are still being addressed.
Right. A complex picture.
So wrapping up our deep dive into these sources, it's been quite a journey.
From prehistoric settlements, Roman forts, that unique path to becoming a principality.
Navigating wars, balancing monarchy and democracy, the rise as a financial powerhouse, preserving stunning nature.
It's clear Liechtenstein is way more complex and, frankly, resilient than just its tiny size suggests.
A place shaped by geography, adaptable, rich in culture and history, always navigating its place between bigger neighbors and the global scene.
Which really leaves us with a fascinating question for you, the listener, to think about. How does a country like Liechtenstein manage it all?
Yeah, how does it maintain such a strong national identity and its sovereignty in today's world? Given its unique history, its political setup, its reliance on external relations, and, let's face it, sometimes controversial industries like banking secrecy.
How does it balance all that in this interconnected, often critical modern world?
Definitely something to mull over.